Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. Alrighty, ro. Disheveled this morning. Well, apologies. Namo Myoho Renge Kyo. Thank you for being here. Listen, first things first. Well, first thing is thank you for your practice, your determination and diligence. That's amazing. So thank you for that. I appreciate your practice. Secondly, I asked a question in the last video, or the last couple of videos, about format and duration and so forth, and I got a lot of great responses from you guys, and it's so important for me to hear from you guys in the comments. My whole motivation for this channel and all the resources I put online is to help us feel inspired and deepen our relationship with our practice. Yeah. So it's very important to me. The only gauge I have of whether or not I'm doing that successfully is your feedback. And success for this channel, obviously, is that it's meaningful and useful to solidify and build confidence in our practice, right? We all need that. So thank you again for the comments. Super appreciative for that. And yeah, so enough effusion on that topic, but thank you. And let's get into the Lankavatara. Now, The subject is turning a little bit here between Mahamati and Shakyamuni. And I made a note here, ego formed of the Manovijnana, the seventh consciousness, the Manovijnana, from the karma of the Alaya, the eighth consciousness, right? So it's important to realize that that's the point of development of Mahayana in the Lankavatara. The dialogue, the teaching that at this stage of Mahayana that Shakyamuni is promoting is that within the energetic makeup of being, this instantiation of many, many energies in tendencies and conditions, that is the person that we experience. We actually experience through this vehicle of self. We ourselves are not the experience. And that's the main point here, is that all of this perception of life, happy, sad, success, all of it, turns to identity, is a mechanism of mind. It's not an organ. It's not some extant thing. It's a process. It's an ongoing moment-to-moment experience. It's hard to detach that experience from an experiencer. See, because identity means that there's an experiencer, and somehow in our minds, in samsara, that fulfills the qualification of a thing, an extant, right? Permanent, past, present, future thing. moving through time. What's actually moving through time is our experience of thingness. And so this trying to divide these perceptive experiences is a difficult thing in language. We experience it all the time in mind, but then we transfer that, transmigrate, if you will, into the body experience, rather than understanding that even the body experience is something experienced in this ephemeral mind, right? So if all of the experience of mind is based on this freight train of karma, energies with work, with action, right? Activity. A lot of words start with act, right? Actions and actualities. If you start looking at all those words and look at the first three letters, the idea of an act, like watching actors on a stage, it starts to, even in our language, we have a fundamental knowledge of this experience, not as a thing, but something that's an ongoing, moving, moment-to-moment process. That's true of all phenomena. And Buddhism tries to nail this down, right? This is Shakyamuni's effort from the get-go, and that there's an attendant, when you make that mind shift, there's an attendant release of that grasping energy that wants to drag everything along from the past, when in fact the past is gone. It's no longer relevant. Except, you might say, as an experience, but there it is again. That's something your mind is utilizing to sift through what is happening now. And in that space is where attachment arrives. And trying to define that in words, even as I just did, it's slippery, isn't it? So, after our last diatribe, Shakyamuni is now going to shift into the verse, the sermon actual of this sutra, and this one's kind of long, so let's do it. So it is said, the Sita is bound up with the objective world. Right, the Vijnanas, the Manovijnana, all of the 8 really, but the 7 consciousnesses, the 8th being a special condition that is the source from which the other 7 manifest, right? But even if you allow for that, the 8 consciousnesses are bound up with this experience of the objective world. Right, so pay attention. The words, we don't want to be glued to the words, but the words have a lot of information in them. And from that, we can derive a sense, a meaning of what is being pointed to. But if all we do is look at the words and obsess about the words, then all we're doing is looking at that finger pointing, right? We're not seeing the objective of, or the meaning of, the teaching. So the Sita is bound up with the objective world. The intellect's function is to speculate. And in the excellent state of imagelessness, there is the evolving of transcendental wisdom. The prajna that we've talked about so many times, right? The Buddha wisdom. So now we've had some, and this is Suzuki's doing, the author, but now we have more words trying to say, again, the same thing that he's been saying all along. The intellect's function is to speculate. So in that sita, the mind that's bound up with the objective world, we have an intellect, which itself is a complex word, but we're talking about all of the citas, all of the consciousnesses, working together to sort things out. And so we could call that the intellect, but we're already in the world of identification, right? Attachment, defining, cubbyholing, this, not that, so on and so forth. And so it's the function of that mind to speculate. Well, so now he's saying not only this and not that, but what if? How far away is this from that? It's getting more and more complex now. All we're doing, though, is diving deeper into our attachment of what we're speculating about, right? Now we're imagining. And here's the imagination reference. And in the excellent state of imagelessness, now he follows up that statement with this one, which is a complete reversal. Pay attention. So you've been using your imagination, the intellect has, and should say otherwise instead of and, because that's confusing. In the excellent state of imagelessness, when you understand the emptiness of all that imagining and the this and that and categorizing, that is not where the process of life is. That's just a kind of the wake after it's gone by. Yeah? We're identifying the froth in the waves when what we should be paying attention to is the ship that we're on breaking through the surface of the waves. Yes? What is discriminated, there is an evolving of transcendental wisdom. So that's a whole complete paragraph in those two brief statements, right? The sita, the mind of perception, is bound up with the perceived. And in that process, the mind is free to dance around playing with all the stuff, like a little kid with the toys all over the floor, yeah? But that in itself is not life. That is playing with the confetti. That's not the party. Okay? So he's saying in that more mature knowledge of the confetti is just a result of the party going on, now we can evolve a mind of experience of the actual process and really party, right? According to the false imagination, so it comes back to the word imagination now instead of speculation, self-substance is, but from the point of view of relativity, it is not. Owing to perversion, what is discriminated is grasped as real. In the relativity, there is no discrimination. So now we have word salad again. But I think you understand what is meant here. So let's go through that again. According to false imagination. So now he's going to describe where these tripwires are in what he's already defined as intellect's function to speculate. In other words, imagination. And what he's saying is that in that false imagination, that playing with the confetti, there's the idea that there's a confetti and a self and you're playing. Like that's a real thing that's happening. And you could argue, well, yeah, I've played with confetti. Fine. But understand, he's going to show you side A and then side B. Side A, samsara, side B, Buddhahood. Where's the difference here? what's going on. Are we getting rid of the confetti? No. It's a matter of perception. So what he's going to say is, from the viewpoint of relativity, not sure that's a perfect word there, but from a viewpoint of this discernment, this identification, right? This this self-substance of reality is it's not. It's a temporal thing. It's a momentary thing. But owing to perversion, what is discriminated is grasped as real, because the experience then becomes reality. It's like the mind and life and process is speeding through time-space. But the fact that we perceived a time and space, a thingness, a thingifying, actually takes us away from that momentum and glues us to what is essentially the past. That's how we thingify. So we're no longer moving with the time-space, the time-forming energies. We're just playing with the wake, yeah? In relativity, in understanding our position, our mind, as relates to the samsaric baggage, if you will, there is no discriminating, no identifying. It's the identification process, though, of the mind that, forgive the word, but it retards us in our experience of life. It holds us to the wake as though that were the actual thing. Takes us away from the formations, how the wakes are formed. What is forming? Multitudinousness of differentiations is imagined as real by the ignorant, but being like Maya, they obtain not. So, the illusion of, collecting wealth, collecting toys, collecting friends, collecting stuff never fills you up. That's the goal, right? If I just had enough stuff, if I just had enough love, if I just had enough insert stuff here, I would feel complete. I would feel more, meanness? Me-ness? Too careful how you speak. But we always have this hole inside that we can't ever seem to fill up. Well, that's because that's the illusion, that we have a hole to fill up. If we just stand outside of that for a moment, we'll understand that that hole is just a tornado we've created. That the I, the existence, the experience of this life isn't to be found anywhere around or in that hole. That hole is self-created. And so we move to a different self. I know it gets confusing, but as an observer, a witness of this process, we suddenly find completeness. What? There's no hole here? It's like if you, this is going to be a terrible analogy, but it's like having a big old, or a bunch of slices. You ever get slices of Swiss cheese? And life is like we obsess about the holes in the Swiss cheese. Take a bite. That bite, the cheese, it has no holes in it. The bite, the experience of, you can't chew on the holes. That's the illusion. Do you see? I know it's a bad analogy, but But like Maya, but like a dream, they do not obtain. Varieties of individual forms are discriminated as such, but they really do not obtain. Because the holes in the Swiss cheese are not the Swiss cheese. We can obsess, oh, that's the cheese with the holes in it. Okay. But when you're chewing on it in a sandwich, are you perceiving the holes from the cheese? No. Do you see? I'm going to keep using it, even though it's a bad analogy. It's sort of fitting. The existence, okay, to imagine individual forms is wrong. It puts one in bondage. They are born of mind due to the false imagination of the ignorant being those who don't know any better, right? The regular people. Based on the relativity, they are discriminated. This, not that. Me, not you. Let's have fun individuating, identifying everything. That identifying takes you away from your experience of life. The existence thus subjected to discrimination is no other than its relativity aspect. The false imaginations of various forms based on the relativity discrimination is carried on. It's samsara. Conventional truth and ultimate truth, if there be a third non-entity, is its cause. The false imagination belongs to the conventional. When it is cut asunder, there is the realm of the wise. So again, word gymnastics, saying the same thing. Change your experience of life from a grasping, identifying, making real what ultimately is not, because it's already gone, to an experience of being among, with, in the same process as everything. Suddenly your world, your worldview, your experience of your life grows to encompass the entirety of life, the entirety of the universe. It's not so local, as you've heard me say, right? We talk this way all the time. Oh, you rock my world, as though we have separate worlds. And don't confuse that with the discussion of realms and the 10 worlds and all of that. All of this is about the mind, ultimately about attitude. Because if your attitude is a slave to your imagination, you're in a tumble. Life is hard. Everything is suffering, right? Anxiety and stress. But if your attitude pervades the entirety of phenomena, which is not as big as you think it is, because it's all going on in the mind. I know I'm pointing to my skull, but the mind, yes? When you experience life from that place, then even the statement, my world or the world, becomes kind of smoky and almost meaningless. Because the world, the realm that we live in, is a constantly moving kinetic of energy. It's constantly changing. And so we shouldn't be trying to keep up with it or hold it back. We should just be flying with it. Amazed by it. Witnessing its constant instantiations. Right? Meeting other people with the fascination of, how are you seeing? Do you see all this? Oh, you see it like this? Wow, I hadn't thought of that. it's a mind expanding experience that's constantly open to the insistent, constant change, floating with time rather than trying to grasp it. When you try to grasp time, how can you do that? Right? Even to say, and I've said it before, but even to say, living now is a meaningless kind of statement, because what it means is that you're trying to grasp time and hold on to it like a lollipop now and just collect lollipops. You're still identifying. It isn't about living in the now so much as it is in the nowness, because now's gone, right? Moment to moment, you couldn't say now fast. No, 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 no. It'd be like a machine gun, yeah? But that's time isn't a location. Even in our samsaric mind of trying to put words to this, we can't help but identify. And Buddha-ness is just do away with that. Just experience it. And then time sort of collapses, because the idea we have of time is the discrete moments. But the experience of those discrete moments is just a stream. It's a stream, and experiencing it doesn't feel like movement. That stream has momentum, but like if you walk from the rear of a plane to the front of the plane as it's flying through the air, you don't experience 700 miles an hour. Do you? You just experience the speed of your own movement. This is like Buddhahood. That life is screaming along, but without anchoring ourselves on identification, we're free to fly. Move right along with it, which means that we can express every aspect of our potential without having to concretize it, anchor it. Oh, there I am, here I am. Just be. Literally, being. As to the yogins, there is one reality which reveals itself as multiplicity, and yet there is no multiplicity in it. So is the nature of false imagination. As by the dim-eyed, a variety of objects is seen and imagined, while the dimness itself is neither a form nor a non-form, so is the relativity discriminated by the unknowing ones. So there he is trying to describe, as I was earlier, the dim-eyed. In other words, that those who don't penetrate into the true nature of things, they see a variety of objects, right, discriminated forms, without ever considering who's doing the forming, what's doing the forming, what is forming. There's nothing to that. So what's happening there, right? It's a function of grasping, attaching, identification. As is pure gold, water free from dirt, the sky without a cloud, so is the mind, pure when detached from the false imagination. Falsely imagined existence is not, but from the relativity point of view, it is. Assertion and refutation are destroyed when one is freed from the imagination. Now, don't get this wrong. He's not talking about painting pretty pictures and, our imagination can be a very wonderful, playful tool that we use in daily life, certainly. The imagination he's pointing to, though, is a fallacy of mind that what we experience, our experience of life, is in the things that we accrue. We never ask in that process, what's doing the accruing? Or, more accurately, perhaps, we default the accruing by an accruer, and that's our identity. If the relativity aspects of existence is, while the imagination is not, this means that there is a being apart from being, and that a being is born of a non-being. Wordplay. But that being word is something to consider, and this is what he's playing around with here. Is a being an I, an identity, or is being a verb? Noun, verb, noun, verb. Stop being a noun and be a verb. An action, right? What is a verb? It's an action. A noun, person, place, or thing. Depending on the false imagination, there obtains the relativity aspect of existence from the conjunction of form and name. There arises false imagination. Once again, this is just an evolved description of the nidana. The moment we apply identification, name and form, nama rupa, how far back in the teachings do we want to go? He's repeating the same thing. False imagination can never be perfect knowledge. It is not productive of anything else but itself. Then one knows what is meant by ultimate truth, whose self-nature is purity. Purity meaning experience, non-attached, just being the verb. There are 10 kinds of false imagination and 6 kinds of relativity. Here we go with the dissection, right? But this could be helpful. In the knowledge of tathata, innerly attained, there are no differentiations. Truth consists in knowing the 5 dharmas and also the 3 svabhavas. When the yogin thus comprehends the truth, he does not transgress tathata. So once you're through discrimination, it's saying the same thing another way. The mind of discriminations is distracted already from being. According to the form of relativity, there are those names that belong to false imagination, and the various aspects of false imagination arise from relativity. So you're caught in a circle there. You're not progressing. You're just identifying, and then identifying the identifying, or the identifier, or the identified. You're just stuck. That's samsara. When well pondered with intelligence, Buddha wisdom, there is neither relativity nor false imagination. Where perfect knowledge is, there is nothing dualistically existent. For how, with intelligence, can discrimination take place? If you understand the process of life that all phenomena is experiencing, then what need is there to go back and inventory? Just be. Where perfect knowledge is, the existent cannot be qualified with being and non-being. in what cannot be qualified with being and non-being, how can there be these two svabhavas? Right? These are definitions of the trap, the samsaric imagination. Because of false imagination, the two svabhavas are established. Where there is false imagination, multitudinous of things is recognized, which being purified, the spiritual condition of the wise obtains. Where there is false imagination, there is multitudinous of objects, which are discriminated under the aspect of relativity. This, not that, that, not this. If otherwise discriminated, one becomes attached to the teachings of the philosophers. Because there's always identification. And what does identification create? That pyramid of identifications, ego. What is imagined, being subjected to further imagination, there are various views from which rises the doctrine of causal origination. When the dualistic discrimination is got rid of, there indeed is perfect knowledge, Buddha-ness. Further, Mahamati said, "Please tell me, emancipated one, about the one vehicle." Oh, interesting. The one vehicle that characterizes the inner realization of noble wisdom, whereby I and other bodhisattva mahasattvas become conversant with the one vehicle which marks the inner attainment of noble wisdom, may be established without depending on anybody else in the teaching of the Buddha, of Buddha-ness. Shakyamuni says, "Then Mahamati, listen well and reflect within yourself as I tell you." Ooh, big bomb coming. Mahamati, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said, "Yes, yes, I will," and gave ear to Shakyamuni. Thereupon, Shakyamuni says, "In accordance with the authoritative teachings in which there are no discriminations, Mahamati, let the Bodhisattva Mahasattva retire by himself to a quiet, secluded place where he may reflect within himself, not relying on anybody else, but by means of his own inner intelligence, in order to discard erroneous views and discriminations, make successive advances, and exert himself to finally enter upon the stage of Tathagatahood. This, Mahamati, is the characteristic feature of the inner realization to be gained by means of noble wisdom." Now, friends, we practice Lotus Sutra Buddhism, the one vehicle. And what Shakyamuni just described is exactly what we do when we enshrine a Butsudan in a room or place that is distinct from the rest of the house. It has no stuff around it, no football trophies or favorite books. That wall is clean because that wall is dedicated to what? Our invocation of our Buddha-ness. We don't need to have Mickey Mouse and the whatever distracting our samsaric mind. That's not the mind we want. We want the mind of Buddha-ness. So we do exactly this. We, in accordance with the authority, there are no discrimination, retire himself to a quiet, secluded place, our enshrined Butsudan, where he may reflect within himself. Reflect, using a mandala, within himself, Gohanzan, not relying on anybody else, Nobody's going to hand you your Buddha-ness, as I've said countless times. But by means of his own inner intelligence, your own Gohonzon, your own Buddha wisdom, make successive advances and exert himself to finally enter upon the stage of Tathagatahood. Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge Kyo. That's exactly what he's saying right there. This, Mahamadi, is the characteristic feature of the inner realization to be gained by means of noble wisdom. Nichiren's brilliant. Nichiren really pounded on this paragraph, didn't he? Just wanted to point out, at the time this was taught, people didn't know that, right? They weren't ready. It wasn't time yet. But yet, there he is talking about it. The consistency from beginning to end of Shakyamuni's teachings is mind-boggling. Easy for us to see because we've gone to the end of the story. We're at the culminating teaching. Harder for these people hundreds of years, thousands of years earlier, right? But there it is. Nichiren didn't invent it. But he sure is our modern teacher. He knew how to get us going, what we needed to hear. Going on. What characterizes the way of the one vehicle? I call it the one vehicle because thereby one recognizes and realizes the path leading to the one vehicle. How is the path of the one vehicle to be recognized and realized? The recognition of the one vehicle is obtained when there is no rising of discrimination by doing away with the notion of grasp and grasping and by abiding in the reality of suchness. And this is exactly what happens when we chant. How many times have I been asked, what should I be thinking when I chant? Don't. If a thought crosses your mind, of course your mind is always thinking. You're never going to stop thought. I've already talked about that. But when your thinking is pronouncing Namu and Myoho Renge Kyo correctly, with your eyes reflected on the mandala of that teaching, and your mouth enunciating those syllables, and your ears hearing that you're establishing a proper rhythm, a consistent Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, Namu Myoho Renge, and look at my body, I feel it, right? Body, mind, all the consciousness, vision, oral, mouth, taste, smell, all of it. Instead of being distracted, oh, what scent is that? Who just went by the door? That's our normal state, right? But when we have something to focus on, a proper mandala of this teaching, and we energize our bodies, mind, lungs, tongue, everything, and focus on Namu Myoho Renge Kyo, and we see it reflected for us, we then, what do we reflect? Not this body. Our Gohonzon, our open door that says Buddha-ness, then all of those discriminations around us that our mind is constantly identifying, it just goes away because now we're totally occupied in what? Realization. That's how the Daimoku works, my friends. That's why we have a mandala. So that we can quickly and immediately shut off the delusions and be in Buddhahood. So you want to think about something as you're chanting? Think about your chanting. Think about meeting Buddha-ness. That's all you should be thinking about. What did Nichiren say? Single-mindedly seeking Buddha. That's plenty to think about. So we're going to use your facility of thought, which is always happening, and we're going to direct it to its most expressed and immediate and powerful potential. That's what we think about when we chant. And it's being defined here by Shakyamuni. Mahamadi, this recognition of the one vehicle, except by the Tathagata himself, has never been obtained before by anybody else. The philosophers, Shravakas, Pratyekabuddhas, Brahmins, etc. For this reason, Mahamadi, this is known as the one vehicle. Mahamadi says, for what reason is it that you speak of the triple vehicle and not of the one vehicle? Right? Why do you speak about... So again, Mahamati is this transitional figure in time from the earlier teachings to now the Mahayana, right? Thus Mahamati... I'm sorry. So now the emancipated one answers. Because there is no teaching whereby the Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas can realize nirvana by themselves. I do not speak of the one vehicle. Thus, Mahamadi, the Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas are disciplined, segregated, and trained in meditation according to the disclosure of the Tathagata, whereby they are led to emancipation and not by themselves. So they're in training. That's why I talk about these other vehicles, but that's a provisional, that's a guidance teaching to get you to the one vehicle. Because I am here. My experience of Buddha-ness, I can lead you to. But when I'm no longer here, you're going to have to do this on your own. That's why there has to be a one vehicle, and that is the Lotus Sutra, right? Further, Mahamadi, as they have not yet destroyed the habit energy of karma, and he puts memory in here, but we know that's wrong, of karma and the hindrance of knowledge, all the Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas are unable to realize the egolessness of things and have not attained the inconceivable transformation death. I preach to the Shravakas and Pratyekabuddhas the triple vehicle and not the one vehicle. When Mahamadi, destroying all the evil habit energy, they realize the egolessness of things, they who are now free from the evil habit energy will not be intoxicated by the samadhis and will be awakened into the realm of no evil outflows. Now, being taken into a super world, which is the realm of no evil outflows, they will gather up all the material for the attainment of the Dharmakaya, which is of sovereign power, and beyond conception. So it is said, and now he's going to close with a verse, sermon. The Deva vehicle, the Brahma vehicle, the Shravaka vehicle, the Pratyekabuddha vehicle, and the Tathagata vehicle, of these I speak. So long as there is a mind making conscious efforts, there can be no illumination or culmination as regards the various vehicles. When a revulsion takes place in the mind, there is neither a vehicle nor one who rides in it. Well, what? There's a fascination with learning, right? The perennial student. I've done that, yeah. I love knowledge. I love learning. But that's ego in another way, because it's a collection and this, right? It's a discriminations and a collection of knowledge, but that does not in itself make you, enlighten you. That's still you, ego, collecting knowledge. And this is the fallacy of the early practitioners of Buddhism, Shravakas, Pachaka Buddhas, right? What's often referred to as Hinayana. Includes Arhats, by the way, but Suzuki doesn't want to admit that. There is really no establishment of various vehicles, and so I speak of the one vehicle, but in order to carry the ignorant, I talk of the variety of vehicles. There are three emancipations, and in all things there are no ego substances. Knowledge and passions are of the same nature. When one is emancipated, they are discarded. Like a piece of wood floating on the waves of the ocean, the Shravaka, obsessed with individual marks, is driven along the stream of existence. Though disengaged from the actively functioning passions, they, the Shravakas, are still bound up with the habit energy of the passions, intoxicated with the liquor of the samadhi. They still have their abode in the realm of outflows. They've ritualized meditation now to basically an obsession about the very thing they should be leaving behind. Conundrum, yes? Like unto the drunkard. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped a paragraph. In this there is no course of finality, nor retrogression either. Losing himself in the attainment of the samadhi body, he is not at all awakened, even to the end of the kalpas. Like unto the drunkard, who, being awakened from his intoxication, regains his intelligence, the Shravakas will have the realization of the Buddha's truth, which is his own body. Here ends the second chapter, known as the collection of all dharmas, taken from the Lankavatara of 36,000 slokas. And in the next video, we will start chapter 3. Interesting stuff, indeed. All right. Thank you for sticking with me. I went a little long today, sorry. But it's kind of like spaghetti. Once you start sucking in that noodle, you got to suck it in all the way to the end. Wow. Somebody needs to make it. Well, don't need, but I think it'd be funny to read a book of all my silly little analogies. I don't know. That might be a really big book. Thank you. Thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for being here. Super thanks to the patrons who are able to support us financially with anything from a monthly subscription to occasional event. All of it is super helpful to keep this thing going. Thank you for liking and subscribing. We're growing this Sangha slowly but steadily, and I just so appreciate you guys and your practice. So take care of yourself. Stay healthy. Be kind. Doesn't cost anything. And I'll see you in the next one. Okay? Bye for now.